G'day flight simmers. Welcome to my video. Today we're currently sitting with the aircraft at Key West in Florida. The weather looks really great. I am running active sky at the moment, and hopefully my frame rates won't be too affected, but it's a fairly clear sky, so it should be okay. Now we're going to be flying, of course, the Aerobask Epic 1000, and that aircraft, of course, is fitted with the Garmin G1000. Now I'm currently still learning all the ins and outs of the Garmin G1000, so I'll be making this flight just a simple exercise up to Palm Beach. Just looking at the aircraft, of course, you can see where there's a towing trolley there hooked up the front. There's some passenger baggage here, chocks, and covers for the, I assume, for the pitot tubes. There's also covers over the engine exhaust, and looks like some ropes or whatever to obviously keep the propeller static and stop it from windmilling. So in preparation for our flight, we'll jump into the cockpit. Cold and dark, of course. If we press this, I think it's a little logo button of some kind, we've got a panel that comes up, and in that panel we can check our fuel situation, which looks pretty good at this stage. We've got a co-pilot flying with us today, no other passengers, no baggage, and we've got the provision here to turn on the GPU, which we'll do. You hear it firing up in the background. And to cut down the noise, of course, we can close the door, and I'll do that from the outside so you can see how it all works. Move that out of the way, come in a bit closer, and we close the door. Now while we're outside, we may as well remove all these static elements, because we're just going to be taxiing straight out. We don't need to be towed anywhere. So turning off the static elements, we can turn that off at the same time. So the only thing now is the GPU hooked up, and back inside. The primary flight display is already up and running. We just might move the yoke out of the way for the moment, and we'll turn on both batteries and on the avionics. So that brings up the MFD in the center of the instrument panel. There's another PFD over to the right here, obviously for the co-pilot. Now that we've got power running to the aircraft, we may as well go straight into the MFD. which we can open either by clicking up there, or I've actually mapped the pop-outs to a joystick button. Done the same thing with the PFD, just makes it easier for me to see it. If I'm not happy with that size, I can always grab it down the bottom and you can make it a lot larger if necessary. So at this stage we're just going to concentrate on the MFD, and you can see here we're sitting at Key West, Kilo Echo Yankee Whiskey. We can zoom back a bit and we can see also there's another airport over here. That's Kilo November Oscar X-Ray. Not quite sure whether that's a military base or not. So that range button there enables you to zoom in and out. The next thing we do is we're going to look at the flight plan for ourselves. So to do that, we push that button there and you'll see obviously that Key West is shown as the departure point. Now for the flight up to Palm Beach, I've already obtained a route from Route Finder, which I'll put in. And to do that, we go down to the central FMS button. That'll bring all the saved flights that I have. Click on the center to activate, and we go down to this one, Key West, and that's Palm Beach. Hit enter, and to see what is propagated, we just click the flight plan button again, and it'll show us our departure, our next waypoint, an airway, some further airport waypoints, and then down to Palm Beach. So we don't need that just for the moment. What we'll do now is look at organising our speed, our altitude, and our climbing rate. Now for this particular flight, we're going to go up to flight level 190. We can enter that in our keyboard, and it enters in. For vertical speed, we click here and we type it in. Now the Epic 1000 is a very rapid climber. In fact, I think from looking at the specifications, it can climb at a rate of 4,000 feet a minute, but that obviously would be pretty hard on the gas. So for this exercise we're just going to put in a climb rate of 2,500 feet a minute and enter it there. So that just basically gives us a start for altitude and climb rate. Next thing we're going to do is see what the local QNH is. So to do that, we'll pop up the active sky. We'll go to the map and we can just hold it there. And what it's telling us is that QNH is either 1018 megapascals or 30.07 inches. We've got a wind direction here to 080 degrees, and it's 4 knots, so a fairly calm day. Down to our PFD again, highlight that, and you'll see that it's 30.05. All we have to do is, again, using the keyboard, type in 30.07, hit enter. So QNH is set. Now just looking at our, the next thing we'll look at is the EFB, and we've got AVTAV built into the aircraft. Go to the airport, type in KEYW for Key West. Enter. Loading up. See, my frame rate's at 20 already, so just going to have to watch that today. We can have a look at the airport. You can see that's where we're parked. The wind is going to be coming pretty well much from that direction. Sorry, no, it's coming from that direction. So it's going to be runway 09 departure. I'll just go back and we'll have a look at the SIDs. But as you can see, there are none. So it's just a case of planning your own departure just to make sure to obey all the rules. Just going back to the airport now, and for the information, there's a few things we've got to take note of here. First thing is that there's a caution, and it basically says it's a restricted area R-29116. There's a tethered aerostat radar system located 14 nautical miles northeast of the airport. It operates continuously up to 14,000 feet. That's flight level 140, which is quite a way up for a balloon. It has strobe lighted and marked a balloon and cable. Talk a bit here about local airspace, unscheduled aircraft operations, etc. There's another caution note here about numerous flocks of birds, engine noise abatement procedures, intensive military jet aircraft traffic south and east of the airport. And if we go down here, there's a further article on the that tethered balloon. It says here that runways 927, you climb on a heading of between 087 clockwise to 033 from departure end of the runway to avoid the unmarked tethered balloon up to 14,000 feet. So we'll have to keep that in mind. Just looking at a map of the area, I noticed that if we do in fact go 087, it's going to take us directly over that adjacent airport, which is over here, which we don't really want to do. So I'm going to put a setting in the heading of about 60 degrees. That should take us away from that other adjacent airport and keep us clear of that balloon, because incidentally it doesn't show up in X-plane, but we've got to go by the rules. So to change it over to 60 degrees, it's a matter of clicking on that little square there and type in 60. So we're ready to go there. Okay, it looks like it's time to start up. But before we do that, we'll have to go down here to the controls and just make sure they're set right. So the conditional lever has to come all the way down to off, and the propeller lever has to come down to the feathering slot, and it's ready to, just about ready to start. We'll put our nav and our beacon lights on. The next thing too we've got to look at is just exactly which tank is going to be feeding the engine, and in this case it's the right hand tank, so we put the right fuel pump on before we start up. So everything's ready to start. We hit the start button and we now watch the NG come up and when it comes up to over 10, which it does very quickly, we bring up our condition lever to idle. We then hit the igniter button. Now you can see the props turning over. Torque, NP, ITT and NGs are coming up. Once all this steadies down, which it has, we can bring the propeller up to course. And up she comes. Okay, back over to our instrument panel. We can turn off the igniter. The automatic fuel selector, pusher goes on, autopilot, trim, air pressure. You can hear the pumps come up there. Now because we're going to be flying at flight level 190, we're at that altitude where everybody needs some oxygen. So we might as well put it on here and now. This is just temperature controls and air conditioning, speed, ground, fresh air and defrost. That's all we have to do there. Come back over here. We won't need to put the strobe on at the moment, or the pitot stall button. We'll worry about the prop heat when we get up to altitude. But otherwise it now looks like we're ready to go. I'll drop the flaps to 1. We'll check our flight controls. All the way left, all the way right, all the way forward, all the way back. Rudder pedals, they're all right. The handbrake's down there. Okay, now all we have to do is taxi to runway 09. Handbrake goes off, power up. Should turn our taxi light on too while we're here. Let's check whether that did come on. No, there we are. And we might as well put the pitot on now and our strobe. In this case I'm just going to taxi to the end of the runway. In fact, this aircraft would probably take off from this position if I would turn onto the runway. Come back onto the taxi line. I might just turn on the fuel pump to the left tank as well. suppose what I should be doing is putting in some sort of squawk code. We'll leave it 2000. Put it at standby at this stage. Switch over when we get airborne. And we're just about ready to line up. Alright, before takeoff, check. We can turn on the igniter just in case we have problems with the engine. The inert separator. I must admit I have no idea what that is. Someone could probably tell me. We'll go over to Alt for the squawk. Working off this one, we'll put our heading up the top, and I'd say we're ready to go. Now we increase the condition lever all the way forward. Now this aircraft has a lot of torque, so it does tend to pull to the left, so you've got to be ready for that. There it goes now. Straighten up. And already we lifted up. We're heading a bit of crosswind, not much. Going to use a bit of trim. Gear can come up. As well go straight onto that heading using the autopilot. Flaps can come up. We can even pop our panels out while we're in an external view. So you can see we're already climbing at a rate of 2,500 feet a minute. Speed is increasing. We're already up to 3,000, over 3,000 feet. Yeah, this aircraft is a real rocket. There's that airport I was talking about before. It looks like it's a military base from the type of aircraft on the ground there. Okay, we'll see how we're going. Here's our route over there. We're probably out far enough to avoid these to avoid that balloon that's supposed to be around here somewhere. So to get back on course, just hit the nav button and around we come. Must admit, I really enjoy flying this aircraft. And once you get used to the G1000 and how it operates, it's quite a fun aircraft. Again, to show the flight plan, all you have to do is click that button there. And it shows here that the red arrow shows that we're on the way to waypoint Canoe. then an airway, and then a number of waypoints. Now, while we're looking at this MFD, you'll notice that the G1000 was able to match the altitudes that was in the flight plan. For example, you see here 19, flight level 190, all the way down to waypoint Weaver, and then at waypoint DHP it recommends flight level 170. Now, for those of you who've never really gone into using the G1000, there are a number of videos out, and one in particular from Philipp Ringler from Laminar, and I'll try and find the link for his YouTube video. He goes into great detail on how to use LNAV in the G1000, but what he does explain is that these altitudes that you see in white are really only advisory. They're suggested heights. You do not have to abide by those flight levels if you want to. You can alter them to whatever you want, and then what happens is when you alter them, you are in fact designating them. And as we get along a little bit further here, I'll give a demonstration of how you designate certain altitudes, which means that the aircraft will try and get to that altitude. But I'll come back to that. In the moment, we'll just wait till we get up to our cruise height, which isn't very far away at all. Great day for flying. Bit of cloud up there, but not much. Now temperature is starting to drop. I don't think there's much chance of icing, but well, I'll jump in early here and I'll put the prop heat on just in case I forget. Looking at the MFD, we can get a better idea of where we are. The fact is we are on course. Zoom out again, and there's our next point at Kanu. About another 2,500 feet to go before at flight level 190. Not that we've got any passengers, but maybe I should just show the cabin. Very well finished. Aerobask done a great job here. The lights of course work. Not that we need them today. Okay, we've reached our cruising height of just about. And we should go over to standard barometer. See our outside temperature now has jumped up to minus 17 degrees Celsius. Now that we've levelled off, the airspeed will increase, and I would imagine it's probably going to get up to about 260 knots. Ground speed over here on the right is climbing up 340 knots. Right, now that we've levelled off, I'm going to bring up active sky, and I want to get an indication as to what the situation is at Palm Beach. Estimated in 49 minutes. Expected weather conditions are 0, 0, 0 winds direction and 0 knots, so that's a very, very calm day. KNH is 30.09. Come back up again. Expected weather temperature, so it doesn't give us any indication as to what runway to use. It's a case size, so I would imagine take your pick. Alright, so let's go over to our EFB. And it's Kilo Papa Bravo India, that should be it. Palm Beach. Over to the airport information. Case, like I say, take your pick. So because I've flown into this airport before, I'm going to stick with runway 28 right, which is has an ILS approach. That will bring up our MFD again. And we'll go to procedures, and we're going to select approach. And I said it was going to be 28 right. That should be the ILS one. Oh, there it is up the top. Hit enter. We won't go vectors. I think we'll go to the initial approach fix of Cupid. And again, I've flown in there before, so we'll use that. We don't want to fly a course reversal. That'll be a no. And we've got to put in the minimums. They'll be Barrow. And we'll slip back over to approach, ILS level 28 right. Go down to minimums, it's straight in landing, ILS, it's 218 feet. Down the FMS button and 218. I don't think it'll quite do 208, it's a case of close to 10. We'll make that 220. Hit the enter, and we'll load it in. Now we'll see here under the active flight plan that we've now got the full route details, including the approach. Now what I might do at this stage is I'm just going to pause the flight to explain what's going to happen here. You'll see that the initial approach fix is at Cupid, and if you look at the right, look at the altitude here, it's in small letters and it's coloured blue. Now that basically means it's a publicised approach to that particular runway. If you don't like that, if you want to come in a bit lower, a bit higher, you can actually change that to whatever altitude you want, and then by highlighting it in blue, the aircraft will aim for that altitude. The next ones you see, this one here for example at Realty, is at or above 1,500 feet. Now that is the final approach fix. You cannot change that. Anything below any of these altitudes below that, you cannot alter. You cannot alter them, because it's expected that by the time you get to the final approach fix, you will be using either VNAV, RNAV, or an ILS, and that will be basically taking over for you. Now, what I did find is that the approach to Cupid is a very tight turn from the direction I'm coming, and the last time I flew, it had trouble locating that particular fix, and it went around in circles for a while until it could sort itself out. Now, to remedy that situation, you can I've actually put in an extra waypoint called TURPS, T-U-R-P-S. That takes the aircraft out a little bit further into the ocean and allows it to do a nice turn, to then line up to waypoint Cupid. Now, to enter that extra waypoint, you go to Cupid, highlight it. I just might make that a little bit bigger. And then go to the center button, and you'll see up the top here where you can enter in your waypoints. So T, I find these knobs very fiddly. I wish there was a quicker way of doing it, but unfortunately not. There's TURPS, it's found it already. We'll hit enter, and you'll see it appears just above Cupid as the initial approach fix. You'll also notice there's no altitude put in there, which means you can enter an altitude and you can designate that altitude so that the aircraft does descend to that altitude. But before we do this, I'm going up to the top where you see the waypoint brickle and an advisory only, because it's in white and in large letters, an advisory of 10,914 feet. Now that just before that that waypoint DHP is very close to Miami Airport, and I would rather that I'd be at a lower altitude at Brickell before I start making the final approach to Palm Beach. To do that, I click on it. I think I've got to unpause it. I click on it. No, I don't have to unpause it. It'll go up with this. And down to the centre knob, and I change that to, in this case, I want 8,000. It gives me a nice, slower, shallow approach to turbs, waypoint turbs. So we enter that, and you can see that it is now changed colour to 8,000 feet. And if you look down here, it now says that if you want this aircraft to be at 8,000 feet at Brickell, you've got 3 minutes 50 seconds to activate VNAV. So we've got to move over there very quickly. I'll move this out of the way. And we must put in the altitude here. I'll just go back there for a second. And it says it has to be 8,000 feet, so I've confirmed that. And you'll notice already that the G1000 is entered 8,000 as the descent to altitude. You have to match that. If you don't, you'll have all sorts of problems. Now I'll bring up I'll just shrink that down a bit. If you see now, we've got 2 minutes 59 to top of descent. You can actually engage VNAV before you reach 0. So I'll go ahead and do that now. And up the top you see VPath has been added. So now we just have to wait for another 2 minutes before the aircraft starts to descend. Clouding up a bit, but that's not a problem. I should have turned off the taxi, but never mind. Nobody saw that, did they? The beauty about these pop-outs is that you can also drag them over to a second screen, which I like to do. It still stays here though, so you can do all your control buttons from either here or from the off-screen one. We'll bring up the MFD again, and you can see now that we've only got 1 minute 51 to top of descent. Yeah, here's another thing you can do. You can go to Brickell and highlight it, and you'll see it appears there on the flight display. If you just move this out of the way, you can see here, and I'll just zoom in a bit, there's like a little circle, I call it a pip. It's moving slowly towards the aircraft, and what that means is that is the point where the aircraft will begin to descend. So when you reach that, it should go down. If you look down here, it's showing that the vertical target should be about 1,500 feet per minute, and the angle should be at 2.5. You can actually alter that if you want. Now also you notice now it's starting to show that the required vertical speed has come up, and if we go now over to the PFD, I'll highlight that again. We'll see that this has come up on the side. Now that's the vertical deviation gauge, meter, whatever you want to call it. We've got 21 seconds before descent starts. Now you can see that the vertical deviation arrow is coming down. This one on the right, by the way, is the vertical speed target. The one thing to remember is there is no auto throttle on this aircraft, so now that it's descending, you've got to come back on the throttle. Okay, so we try and get the speed around about 253, something like that. And you see now we're descending from 19,000 feet. What I have to do is put up the active sky and check the QNH, which is 30.09. Put that in now. Okay, so it's the barometer's adjusted. Now looking over here, you can see that we should reach flight level, well, 8,000 feet, 6 minutes and 33 seconds. So that's time to top of bottom of descent. Now what will happen there is the aircraft will level off at 8,000 feet. It won't do anything further from that point on to the approach unless I tell it to. And again, I'll show you that. While we're doing that, I'm just checking to see what the ILS frequency is for runway 28 right, and it's a 11190. Now it just so happens to be still in here from the last time, and to activate it we pull it over and we hit the ident button, and that's it. Coming down slowly. And we can look at the MFD to see exactly where we are. Just trying to see what that waypoint is. Go back to the flight plan. Actually, it's waypoint DHP, and that's the one that's virtually above Miami Airport. I'm not quite sure whether I'm doing the wrong thing at 8,000 feet, and what sort of restriction there might be. But this is just an exercise, and I'm not going to worry about that. Got to keep an eye on your speed. It doesn't sort of creep up too much past what you want it to be. Now the next waypoint we're heading to is Brickell, and we want to be at 8,000 feet. It says here we've got another 4 minutes 31 seconds before we reach Brickell. And we're descending at a steady rate of 1,450 feet per minute. And you would see here over on the right, that basically is the vertical speed that's required at the 2.5 degree flight angle. I still find that this G1000 can be a little bit tricky in the VNAV mode, and let's face it, this aircraft probably is meant more to hand fly, but it's good to know that if you're feeling lazy, you can have the autopilot do everything. And during that turn there, you probably notice that the vertical deviation bug, whatever you want to call it, dropped down a bit, because the aircraft is probably a little bit high, but it usually sorts that out. Speed is obviously went up a little bit there too, so I'll make sure we drop back a bit. I'd like to be close to 250 knots. And from my understanding, that the G1000 calculates all of this based on your ground speed. There we go, our speed's coming down about 250. I believe that the default Cirrus, there's an add-on for that where you can have one with an auto throttle, so that that'll make you even lazier. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter in the same height at Terps as it is at Cupid, which is the initial approach fix. To do that, we come down and center knob, we put in 1500, hit the enter button. You'll see 1500 feet is now in blue, which means it is designated. The aircraft will attempt to reach that altitude, and that'll set us up for a nice approach, I hope. So going back to Brickell, we're now coming into Brickell. If I zoom out a bit, and you see the aircraft there. So we've got 2 minutes 35 to come to Brickell. We're already at 11,500 feet, heading for 8,000 feet. And once we get to Brickell and 8,000 feet, I then have to move very quickly to make the aircraft do a direct approach, or sorry, activate the approach to the runway. Now if this works properly, we should see Terps come up here. It should say 1500 feet. and then it will give us a countdown for top descent. See what's happening outside. Weather still looks okay. I'm getting some frame hit here, but should be alright. As we come in for the approach shot, we can get rid of these pop-outs. Down to 10,000 feet. 1 minute 34 to go. You can see our vertical deviation bugger is sitting quite nicely. We're showing here 1,300 feet per minute, and if we go over here to the MFD, you can see it's 1,330. It's pretty well matching what we want. Speed is 256 knots, creeping up a little bit, so I'll come back off. If you drop the speed back, it does have some effect on the time to the from the top of descent, but I've found that it's quite controllable. One thing I did forget to do was to bring the prop back to sort of a more leaner mixture, but anyway, when you're trying to do a type of tutorial, you tend to forget a few things. Right, now you can see that it's lit up here. We're coming to 8,000 feet. We're looking down here at the MFD. You can see from the light display there that we're getting close to Brickle. Now once it gets to 8,000 feet, we can go to progress. That's as soon as it levels off. The different altitudes can mess you up a bit. Okay, there we're ready for the turn. You notice that you now only just got the 8,000 feet here. So what we do now is we activate the approach, hit flight level, and what does it say? It says you've got 4 minutes 35 top of descent to terps. What you do have to do is you have to put in that altitude, otherwise it will not descend. So now it still stays leveled at 8,000 feet. 1,500 feet has been entered in the altitude box, and 1,500 feet is what the aircraft is aiming for. We're sped right up again, so I'm going to drop it back a little bit because we're probably about 220 knots. It's probably just a good speed coming into the approach. Now if we go over here again to the MPD and MFD, and we come down to terps, you can see where terps waypoint is. Now last time, as I mentioned, I made Cupid the first initial approach point, but when the aircraft came up here, it couldn't turn around far enough, and it did this mad circle. Then it lined up. So by putting in that extra waypoint, you can see from the turn that it's going to do, that by the time it gets here, it's going to be lined up with Cupid. If we zoom out a bit, we might be able to see, it doesn't show up, but I'll go to the full screen. Can't just see that little round bug, but hopefully it's going to show up. So it now says we've got 3 minutes and 18 seconds before we should be descending to 1,500 feet. You're seeing we're going to be approaching. I'm going to put the landing lights on now. Our temperature's only 7, so the prop heat didn't go off. I should have turned the igniter off before, but I forgot. Yeah, we've got 2 minutes 54, so we've got a bit of time to spare, but I am going to switch on the VNAV. And you can see the V path is shown up here. At 1 minute before descent, we should see the vertical deviation bar come up here. We'll look outside to see how things are going. And I'm suffering from frame rate problems. Well, I think OBS has got a lot to do with that. If you look over here, there's the ocean. We'll be going out and turning back into the airport. Two minutes 14 seconds to go. We're around the 220 knots, which is quite okay. We can centre the heading bug here, just in case we need to change over to heading mode. This screen is a little bit cluttered, so I can't see that little circle bug. Well, that, no, that's not it. It should be showing up. Well, I hope this works. We'll know if this deviation thing comes up on the side. If not, then we just go manual. Coming up to the 1 minute mark. There we go, the meter's come up. I called it a meter. And we've got 49 seconds to go. And as it comes down to around about 10 or 15 seconds, we should see that arrow come down. and it's starting to move now. Vertical speed target arrow is sitting there, just around about 1,000 feet per minute. So if you look over here, the target is 1,125. We're down now to 5 seconds, so hopefully we should now start to descend. And there we go, it's doing it. The airspeed's going to come up, of course, because we're descending. So come back on the throttle to wherever you want. In fact, what I usually do is, because I know that at Waypoint Terps or Cupid, I want to be around about 170 knots before we go on the localizer. While we're waiting, we can just have another quick look outside. Cloud build-up since the last time, and of course now my frame rates are messing up. So what I might do, I'll turn off active sky. Should clear the sky. The aircraft will probably bounce around a bit. There we go. Terps is highlighted here on the flight plan. We'll zoom in a little bit, and if you look here, you can see the aircraft heading towards Waypoint Terps. So everything seems to be working okay. 4 minutes 45 seconds to the bottom of descent. Our airspeed's dropping to 200. It's coming down to 200. I'm going to try and get to about 200 knots or thereabouts when we do the turn at Terps. Pushing that out off to my other screen so you guys can get a better view. The thing, of course, is that if you're going to use VNAV on this type of aircraft, to my mind, there's a lot more concentration than if you just doing all the vertical speed adjustments yourself, gauging when the right time to descend. This is pretty well close, I suppose, to the larger aircraft, except that it doesn't have an auto throttle, and you just have to gauge, keep your eye on the speed. Right now we're about 210 knots. I might just leave it around there. You can see we're coming down to, we'll zoom in there. We're coming down now to, we're 4,009, just near 5,000 feet, coming down to 1,500 feet, and another 3 minutes, 15 seconds should see us at 1,500 feet at Waypoint Terps. And there you can see we're coming up, ready for the turn, line up to the runway. might get ourselves ready here for taxi. I must admit I have no idea where the GA parking area is here. I'm going to make a guess. Parking gates and cords might help me. Yeah, that's parking gates. I don't really need the gates. I'll just go for airport information. And if my memory serves me correct, it's here. Yeah, GA parking. So we'll be coming in on runway 28 down here, and if we can pull up in time, turn around and come back. We're 1 minute 53 to bottom of descent, and we're coming down quite nicely. Speed's dropping off a bit. That's not too bad. We're not in a hurry. See, the frame rates have much better now that active sky is not working. Well, already we're at 2,400 feet. We've been flashed up the 1,500 foot altitude. We've got roughly 40 seconds left to go to arrive at flight at 1,500 feet. And if we look here at the map display, come up with the range a bit. We're just about ready to make the turn. So that should happen very soon. There's notification that we're close to the waypoint. We're only 8 seconds, 7 off the waypoint. And we're almost close to 1,500 feet. To go around the circle here, the aircraft makes a turn to the right and then comes back onto the waypoint. Well, it should. I'm watching the speed now. It's dropping off a bit, which is still okay. We can drop the speed back to about 180. And for some reason it's, oh no, it's going to turn back to get on to the next waypoint at Cupid. So it's doing pretty well much what it did the last time on me, but anyway. Airspeed will keep it up around about the 180. Now it should line up with waypoint Cupid. Don't know why it does that, but and once it lines up with waypoint Cupid, what we should see then is that the G1000 will automatically acquire the ILS, and then we'll capture the glide slope. Just zoom out a little bit here, you should still see the aircraft. There it is. You can see it's aiming to line up with the flight, with the route to waypoint Cupid. Airspeed 180, that's still okay. Drop it back a bit. better view if we get rid of that. So yeah, it went up to terps and went around like that for some reason, instead of going up and turning left. Don't know why it does that. Airspeed's dropping off a little bit too much. Now if we watch down here, we should see this change over to green, and up here we should see the glide slope lights, and it'll turn to green. Once we turn and head towards Cupid, we probably won't need this pop up. Now we're doing the turn to Cupid. We're slightly high for some reason. I don't know why that is. It does say 1500. I'll just move that up here, but we're at 1700. Not quite sure the reason, but that should not stop us from capturing the glide slope. Coming up on Cupid. It's sorting itself out. There we go. We've now changed to the ILS approach, and already, no, not yet, it's dropping back down to 1600, no, to 1500. We should see it capturing the glide slope up here. At the moment it's not green. I'm going to drop the speed back now. We are lined up for the runway. Come back down on the power. We should see the bug come down here. That's something I got wrong. Actually, you have to hit the approach button to capture the glide slope. Airspeed coming down, and in fact I can bring it down, probably down now to about 150 knots. Airport is in sight. Everything should be right for landing. We will put on the igniter. Airspeed's still dropping nicely. Still waiting for the bug to come down. And it's now alive, I suppose is the right terminology. So we can hit the approach button. And if we look up here, we should see glide slope captured. And it didn't. Too high. Autopilot off. Airspeed down. For some reason it didn't capture. So we'll have to take it down manually. Airspeed right back. And the bug's coming back up, and it'll probably make a fool of me and activate. No, it didn't. Alright, speed right off. Gear down. Flaps 1. Bit too low. Flaps 2. She wants to jump up with that second flap. There we go. Airspeed around about 100. I like to come in a little bit faster than the stall speed, that's for sure. Reverse is on. Reverse is off. Throttle down a bit. Not quite sure which way I should turn off here, but we'll just have a look here quickly. We should have turned off there and come back that way, which we'll do. Fortunately, there's no other traffic around. Taxi light can come on. Landing lights can go off. Now we can turn off the pitot, we can turn off the strobe. And if you look over in the distance there, somebody's run their pleasure craft up on the land. Let's go outside and have a quick look at that. Sea Dream. High and dry. The helicopter's gone. So a hard turn to the left and down to GA parking. You can turn off the igniter. This really is a sweet little aircraft to fly. And again, as I said, it's probably designed more for a lot of hand flying with a bit of autopilot work, but it has the VNAV facility, and why not use it if it's there? Particularly, I suppose, on long flights. Right, we're coming up to the GA parking area. Where shall I put this? Let's say we mix it with some of these bigger biz jets. This'll do, I think. Yeah, not a bad spot. Okay, full stop. Handbrake on. And we can turn off some of our systems. Turn off the nav, turn off taxi, turn off the init SEP, whatever that is. And we'll just kill the engines. We'll open up the door. We can probably just have a quick look outside on the replay just to see how that landing was. I think though I've got to close the door, otherwise it shows up. So I'll close the door. Close the door. There it goes. Right, let's have a look. Toggle replay. I just want to see how good or bad that landing was. I really am a bit puzzled as to why it didn't capture the glide slope. Perhaps someone may have picked up something that I missed. Let me know. Frame rates aren't too bad. There's the GA parking area in the background. take that landing. I'll just have a quick look at the head-on approach. Have a look at my nice looking passenger. Oh, sorry, co-pilot. She's happy. I'm going to put the blame on her why we missed the ILS approach. May do one more just from the tower. I'm happy with that. So it's welcome to Palm Beach, home of streamer XP. I would imagine he lives somewhere just over the back there, probably on the beach in some mansion. I hope those of you who watch this have got some benefit from it. I'd just like to repeat, I'm by no means an expert with the VNAV, and as I mentioned earlier, if I'm able to put a link in the notes below to a video on YouTube by Philipp Ringler from Laminar, and he gives a very, very good description of how to operate the VNAV in the Garmin, the G1000. Might be a good idea if I put the flaps up. Again, when you're doing these videos, you do tend to lose a bit of concentration. So I certainly hope you don't mind some of my mistakes. And just so people can get out, I'll open up the door. We'll also put on the static elements. So really we're, except for inside where we switch everything off, we're now back into a cold and dark start. Sorry, cold and dark situation. So that's it for me. Thanks again for watching. Bye.